what deal in real estate did you buy and you were like, all right, I think I can make some good money?
That's a great question. I was just like writing numbers down. I was by myself thinking if the rents go up by this and go up by that, and I buy another building, and then I have this one and I can do this and do that, and I can refinance. I said, wow, this really could work.
Today's episode is sponsored by Holy Milk. I've got a test package here. Delicious vegan milk that has no seed or vegetable oil, refined sugar, natural flavors, or non-organic stabilizers. This stuff is delicious. Check out the Holy Milk Instagram to find out where you can purchase Holy Milk in New York City. Here we are on beautiful Jones Street.
You saw Ted Jones.
Test, checking.
Squeak days. Okay, hello, guys. Ted Jones World Podcast.
Are we filming?
Yeah.
Is this filming? Is it on?
And it's audio. Okay, I was going to say, first and foremost, thank you for coming on the podcast again.
My pleasure.
Guys, we recorded for an hour yesterday, and we only got about 7 minutes of footage. So you figure,
setup minutes.
Since you're a math guy, what's the percentage there?
I don't know.
About 12.5%.
Nice.
Something like that. But we had an issue with the iPhone because I never really shoot on the iPhone, but here we are on the iPhone. We usually have a camera set up in the studio with Ted Jones World in New York. So everything kind of didn't go as well as planned, but we got to warm up in. My father, by the way, I don't think I introduced you yet. You are my dad.
I am.
And you're a good guy. You're a successful businessman.
Am I right?
And it's I don't know if I've ever told you, face to face, but it's inspiring what you've done. Considering, I don't want to say considering where you came from, because you definitely came from a family that did well for themselves, right? Grandma and grandpa did very well.
I grew up decidedly middle class.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Would you say like middle class, upper middle class, or you'd say middle class for the most part, and then you grew into
upper middle class.
You grew into the upper middle class maybe once you were in high school and college. Once grandma and grandpa started.
Yeah,
to
they
get
made
their ish
money
together.
later on. Just like when I was in college, not tons of money, but they did very well after I left the house. They're waiting for that.
Okay, so here we are in Miami. I've been down here for 4 nights now. We've had a great time.
Great to have you.
I've been working out in your gym downstairs, been running on the beach out there. We've been going to dinner. I went to a comedy show last night, but short trip, and I'm going home today. As you guys are listening to this, it's Monday. Last night was New Year's Eve, and I'll be performing I did perform, I should say, at the Comedy Shop on Bleecker Street. I'm sure, yes, I'm hosting a show for Sherrod Small, who's a New York comedy legend, which will be dope. I'm excited for that. So let's talk about your journey down here to Miami. You were saying on the last episode of the pod that you started coming down to Miami more frequently in 2003.
Yeah, I started coming down for business in 2003.
Okay, what was your thought process there to jump from New York owning buildings to coming down to here in Florida?
I felt like New York was too expensive, and I wanted to start exploring other markets, and I thought South Beach would be a great idea.
Well, you thought Florida would be a good idea, or South Beach in particular?
South Beach in particular.
Why is that?
Well, I wanted to be in Miami. I didn't want to be in Tallahassee. The weather's great. It's a lot of fun down here. So that's where I wanted to go.
I think that's interesting. You mentioned like you didn't want to be in Tallahassee. I think that when maybe people who are a little bit older than me and they're starting to get into buying real estate in their mid 30s, 40s, they'll look for the best deals in the best part of the country. But then afterwards, like secondly, they'll think, oh, but I don't know if I want to spend all that time down there. Like they'll buy apartment buildings in Jacksonville and Tallahassee and maybe random parts of Texas, but then you're going to need to go there at least like twice a quarter, So
someone is going to need to go there for sure.
Right. Did you have other coworkers or people that you knew that were going down to random places in the South and they were making money and maybe you were going to potentially go there, or were you set on Miami because that's where you wanted to be?
No, I was set on Miami because that's where I wanted to be.
Okay. Smart. So you'd suggest to people that you need to think about your lifestyle first and then secondly, business.
Absolutely. Like you said, by 2003, I was already established, had a big presence in New York. And so it was sort of the second stage of my career, if you will.
Well, second stage, you'd say, well, if you started coming down here in 2003.
Second stage of my real estate career.
Okay, right. Because you started buying buildings in New York around 1992. That was the first building that you bought?
It was.
At what age did you know that you were going to be successful in life and in real estate? Once you bought that first building in 1992?
Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, like, successful in life? I mean, you know.
Well, because I remember talking to you, there was like a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm good at this. I know that in the future I can build on this path, right?
I get you mean in real estate itself. You mean like, well, so when I was, you know, I had gone to business school and I worked on Wall Street, and the stock market crashed, and I was in a training class at an investment bank, and the whole class was laid off. And, you know, so I had to scramble and do what I wanted, figure out what I was going to do. I wasn't really happy in investment banking. I decided I wanted to do real estate. My father had dabbled in that, and I thought it was really interesting. And I worked with him a little bit on that stuff. And so I said real estate was where I wanted to be. You know, so when I had done a bunch of stuff before I bought my first building, and I was kind of floundering once I was let go from the investment bank. And
how old were you at that time?
Late 20s. It took me like literally 10 years to make a living. I was either unemployed or underemployed for 10 years. It was a tough time.
When Grandpa had first bought that building when he was in his, 40s or 50s on the Upper
West Side. I don't even know how old he was.
Well, but you were discussing how
50s,
Grandma and him every Saturday would set up a bridge table outside that building from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Not the Upper West. Well, actually, he probably did it on the Upper West Side also. I was talking about the Chelsea building in particular. Yeah, I guess he did that. They bought a building on 85th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam, which was not a nice area. You know, at that time, that was like the late 70s. Amsterdam, Columbus was nice up to the museum on 81st Street, the Museum of Natural History. The other one, Amsterdam, wasn't nice, you know, past 75th Street or so. And this was 85th Street. So it was somewhat speculative, but he did very well, you know, and that was the first time that he really did very well and had his own money. So, like I said, I was already largely out of the house in college.
Did you ever go sit with them at the bridge table, try and
I never
sell
sat
apartments? So the
with
reason
them.
they were outside of the apartment building with the bridge table,
Well, they were
there.
inside one of the apartments.
Oh, okay. I thought they were outside the building. Well, it's not whatever. I thought that they were with their gloves cold, like playing bridge, like the guys in Washington Square Park.
No, it wasn't like that.
Wait, what? So they were in one of the apartments. How did they get people to come up? They were just yelling at them?
Because they put
outside
ads in the
window?
Times for every Saturday and
Oh,
Sunday.
just
They had
waiting for
open
them.
house.
So they didn't have brokers at the time?
I don't think they were using
They
brokers.
saved a good amount of money. Why would they not use brokers then?
You know, I never thought
as
about that.
prevalent?
That's because they didn't want to spend the money on the broker.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they were there from like 10 to 6 Saturday and Sunday.
And you were in college
and had
at that
open
time?
houses.
Maybe?
Yeah. I guess I was. Yeah, I was in college.
Well, I know you transferred from Lafayette in Pennsylvania to
I
NYU.
did.
Were you at NYU at that time when they did that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Otherwise, you would have maybe come and helped. I'm sure they would have made you help. Right? Come sit with us.
Don't forget your grandmother's going to be watching this pod.
Yeah, but maybe she doesn't pay attention to every single point. Well, it was fine. Whatever.
nothing
Me
gets past
saying
my mother.
that was really not even one of the stories that I'm sure she'd be upset to hear. You know,
No, that
she
was a
would
good.
make
You know, they
that was a good
worked.
story.
They worked very, very hard. They were there, like I said, from like 10 till 6 every Saturday and every Sunday.
Yeah, they
Until they
were
sold
very
all the
hard
apartments.
workers, which was definitely stressed.
Very hard
by,
workers.
especially by Grandpa. He would always tell me how hard he worked and how
He did work
every
hard.
week. He'd have a job, so he'd get $3 a week, one for a French lesson, one he'd save, and then one he'd give to his mother.
Yeah.
Growing up in Jersey City, he had a pretty difficult upbringing, right?
He did.
was the
He was
youngest
depression baby.
So he was the youngest of six
six.
kids.
Yeah, and so when the Depression came around, he was way under 10, and he was the youngest of 6 kids. And I was telling you this yesterday.
He was probably like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah,
right?
something like that. I was that the it went 3 girls and then 3 boys. Had it gone 3 boys, then 3 girls, the girls, the oldest kids at that time were late teens, early 20s. They could have gone out and made a living. But because it was girls, unfortunately at that time, women were undervalued and
Underemployed too.
Underemployed.
Right?
They weren't respected. They got secretarial and clerical jobs. Men got all the high-paying jobs.
At that particular time, after the Depression, who was the one who put it in Grandpa's head that was like, you either need to be a doctor or a lawyer to make a real living?
I don't know specifically at that
see
time
that?
because he wasn't a doctor or a lawyer. He was a CPA, an accountant. But all the kids, the rich kids in my community, all their fathers were doctors or lawyers. So that's why he wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer.
What were some of the things that he stressed when you were growing up that made you know that you needed to work hard in order to be successful? Besides like the shoveling of the snow.
Besides the shoveling of the snow.
Yeah.
Well,
that was an obvious one.
Oh, well,
kids these days, I feel like that's what they do. They shovel snow. Except for me. I don't know
Did you ever shovel snow, Teddy?
Maybe I made someone else shovel snow.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you do that over there?
No,
I was the manager of the
go shovel
show
the snow.
snoveler.
No, we never.
Snow shoveler.
We
Tongue twister.
The 3 kids, I was one of 3, we always did work around the house. We had to clean up the kitchen. We had chores. We had to shovel snow, rake the leaves, all those kind of things.
And those were little jobs that you did that made you realize that you need to work hard, or were there some things that you saw that were
annoying?
difficult?
I hated working hard.
Right.
But I saw my father as an example. He worked so hard.
How many hours a week would you say that he worked? Including the bridge table, that counts.
Well, he would drive into the city, so that's probably an hour and a half each way.
That far? From South Orange, New Jersey.
Right, from South Orange, New Jersey. Yeah, it was probably,
That's because it was like weekend traffic, and then coming home was probably traffic too.
Well, no, commuter traffic. He worked in the city.
Okay.
Actually, not always, but, some of the time he worked in the city. So he was always driving to work and driving back, and then when he was home, he would probably do 2 or 3 hours of work upstairs on the 3rd floor in the attic. He made himself an office in one of the rooms, and he was he's always so happy and whistling and singing to the radio and all that while he was working. I was here whistling and the adding machine going constantly.
So how many hours a week though?
60 or 70 hours is probably a good guess. Wow. A lot, right?
Yeah. Did he go to school for accounting?
Yeah. He has
Jersey City College, or it was Rutgers,
went to
Newark.
Jersey City State, then he transferred to Rutgers, Newark, where he met my mother.
Yes.
And then so he had his CPA, and he did well with it.
Who were the richest people that you knew growing up? Were they in South Orange, or were there people that you knew in New York City? Because I remember there was a time when you went to sleepaway camp and you met girls who lived in New York City. Yeah, and you were so impressed by them.
It wasn't sleepaway camp. It was it was like at Phillips Exeter Academy.
Was that Camp Shawnee? Or
yeah, not Camp Shawnee. Oh. Camp Shawnee, all the kids were poor like me.
Okay. Or middle class.
Yeah, middle class. I went to this program where Exeter had a summer program, and it was the first time kids from all over the world came to this program, and I never met all these. My world busted open, and so I became very friendly with a lot of kids who were just related to all these famous people, which was really kind of. It was astounding to me. I lived in my little bubble in South Orange.
How old were you at that time?
15.
Okay.
So, I became very friendly with J.P. Morgan's great-great-granddaughter. I very friendly with Sarah Lee from the cake company. You might not even know that.
No, S-A-R-A.
Sarah. Yeah, Sarah. Correct.
Well, I was saying there's no H, so I think I've seen it before.
All right. Yeah, so there's no H. But her grandfather, it's actually her stepmother. Her step-grandfather had started the company and named it after his little daughter, who was Sarah Lee. So that was her mother, and I was so impressed by that. And they lived on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
That's
and
funny.
They went to this fancy private school.
Chapin, right? Or Spence?
Chapin.
All-girls school. I find it interesting that the sense of lineage, when you met these kids who grew up in New York City because their great grandfather had done something that was important in society. But we talked briefly yesterday about how you don't really know anything about your grandfather, correct?
No, that's not my father's father.
That's what I mean. Yes, excuse me.
But he also died in like 1945.
But the reason that you didn't know a lot about him was because
I never heard anything
left.
from my father. Yes, because he left my father's family when my father was like 6 or 7.
Would Grandpa just never talk about him? You wouldn't bring him up?
He rarely talked about him, and when he did, it wasn't much nice to say about him. He didn't do anything good, But he loved his mother.
Yeah.
His mother was an immigrant from Poland who came over when she was 20.
That's crazy.
Didn't really speak English that well, and she was a seamstress. So that's what she was. That's the way they were supporting themselves in the Depression, And plus the 3 older girls were working, as also low-level jobs, clerical kind of jobs. So there wasn't really a lot. He loved his mother. His mother was great. But excuse me, she passed away before I was born. I'm actually named after her.
I didn't know she passed away before you were born. Elsie, right?
Ethel. No, Elsie was my mother's mother.
Who I'm named after, right?
Who you're named after. And
Ted Jones.
Right. She was. I was very close with her. She was terrific. And then my grandfather Pops, he was great too. But it's actually funny that Jews name their kids after a recently passed away relative. So, and the way they do it is with the first letter. So my grandmother Ethel passed away. I was named after her, Eric. And when I was growing up, my parents had said that they wanted to name, that they had considered naming me Edward and calling me Teddy, like Teddy Kennedy. And I was always saying, oh, wow, I wish my name was Edward Teddy. And then my grandmother Elsie passed away, and Teddy was born.
No, but then didn't you name me your name, Eric, for like a few minutes, and then you got in trouble?
Your mother
We don't
did.
do that.
Your mother,
she did?
Yeah, your mother did.
And then you got in trouble?
Yes.
So did it say Eric on my birth certificate for a moment?
I
didn't get that far.
No, it was just that you were born at 4 a.m.
In Jersey for 6 weeks, by the way. So is that an accurate depiction? Because the amount of times I've said that on this pod, that I was born in Jersey for 6 weeks.
You were.
And then we moved to New York.
You were born November 13th, and we moved to New York on December 21st.
Yeah,
and
that's like 6 weeks.
We were renovating a 1-bedroom apartment into 2 bedrooms, and these clowns were doing the renovation, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's done." I'm calling him every day. Is it done? Is it done? Is it done? Yes, it's done. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So we came. The way we moved was with an enormous U-Haul trailer, one of those 18-wheelers, and then behind that we hitched another little U-Haul thing.
How much stuff did you have?
I mean,
a small apartment
maybe it wasn't
in Princeton.
that big. Maybe the front truck wasn't a huge one.
Right.
Whatever. It's just a U-Haul truck, and we had another little thing. So what we had to do was we filled up the U-Haul, the big truck. Then we had to drive to U-Haul and hitch the back thing, then go back and finish loading that. And then when we drove to New York, we unloaded the back thing, drove to U-Haul, got rid of that thing, then had to drive back and then take off and then empty the rest of it. But when we got to New York, the place was covered in sawdust. These guys were like trying to splice wires with a knife, and use a knife as a screwdriver. Like, what? And that's what we moved into. What? And so it was a disaster. But whatever, it was fun. We were young. We didn't know any better. We didn't have any money.
Where were you working at that time?
I really probably wasn't really working. I mean, that's why we didn't have any money. But your mother was working.
Yeah.
And thank God for that. That was the only money we had. She was doing great in her advertising career.
So your first job when you were working for the developer, we were talking about how this is right when I was born, you were making around 40K. Is that an accurate statement, or is that like a couple years before?
That was okay. So the chronology was that I was working for an investment bank, and the whole class got laid off.
That was before I was born.
Before you were born, it was like late 80s, and I started working for a real estate developer in Trenton, New Jersey, commuting an hour and 15 minutes
Reverse
each way.
commuting from the city
we were
to
living
Trenton.
in New York.
Right, nice.
And
Why'd you do that?
I don't know, because I needed a job.
Yeah, but why did you move from Princeton to New York and then to work in Jersey?
Okay, I apologize. That was where you were born. This was before you were born. We were living in New York City. I was working at an investment bank, and then we were in the city. And then so I started reverse commute with that developer in Trenton, and that was 3 months. And then I got laid off there, and then I was out of work for 9 months, and then started working at a real estate consulting firm. And they would take these Ivy League MBAs and
ring them out, as they say.
Ring them out, as I say. Yeah, they until there was nothing left in them, and then just then they quit. I mean, so
did you end up quitting that job, or you got fired?
I quit that job.
Okay.
I quit that job. I met up with an old friend who had been a lifeguard with me at the Jersey Shore, who was doing development in South Jersey. So what he was doing was buying plots of farmland and bringing them through the town zoning to get permission to put single family lots. So I put streets and electric and plumbing and all that kind of stuff. We never did that kind of stuff. Only got it through the zoning and then sold it to a developer, a construction company that actually built single family houses.
Okay, so traveling back and forth, you said that you had a car phone. Do you remember your first cell phone, though?
No, I don't specifically.
And how did your parents adjust to that?
Adjust to what?
Having mobile phones and having the car phone.
Was it just still adjusting?
It was pretty seamless, or no? No,
no, not many people had car phones. Most people just went straight to the cell phone. I had a car phone while I was working for that developer in South Jersey. And it was so cool having that car phone.
Yeah, I bet.
There weren't cell phones around. I mean, all people had was car phones. And but I was only working there for a year, and I was unemployed again. And that's when I was working at Fridays.
When did he? I'm sure, as each job came, you were worried about being fired or being underemployed. Was there? I know we talked about this earlier, but was there a situation where you were like, all right, I'm not going to get fired and I'm not going to be underemployed again? Is that when mom asked you what things that you want in life, and then you were like, all right, I got to do this?
Not exactly. I mean, I was able to, I mean, it was sort of a blessing having this time where I was unemployed, because I was able to sit back and say, what is it I want in life? And actually, like you said, your mother, my wife at the time, was sort of guiding me. We were working together, and like, what do we do? What do I want in life? And I decided I want time, I want money, and I want control, freedom. So basically that meant I needed to be an entrepreneur. I can't work for somebody else. And I was never successful working for anybody else. I don't want people telling me what to do. I always felt I was smarter than the boss. So I just don't have the temperament to work for somebody else. So that's when I started buying buildings. I mean, I didn't start buying buildings. I mean,
what was the process like to buy that
I
first
decided
building?
I wanted to buy a building. My father, we talked about my father doing this real estate stuff, and that had intrigued me, and I decided I wanted to do that. So I just started looking around, and I finally found a building to buy, and then it didn't turn out all right. And then through an ad in the New York Times, I met a broker. We were living in Princeton at this time. I met a broker who was putting out in the New York Times. I went up and had lunch with him, and we got along great.
Who's the broker?
Mike Besson.
Oh my gosh!
You didn't know this?
No,
that's so funny.
The legend, Mike Besson. He worked upstairs from your office building you guys worked in the same
20
building.
years. I know. He moved out. I miss him.
Insane.
Yeah, it's too bad.
If you're listening, what's up, dog? That's insane. Wow. So how? I know I keep asking you how old are you. I just want to get the time.
Yeah, what do you want to know about how old I am so
Well,
much?
because I'm 32. I'm in the middle of figuring out things at the moment. Yeah, but I know you're right now older than me. But I'm just trying to get the timeline. Than you. So yeah, but it shortens each time.
It does
each year,
percentage wise.
But I just want to kind of get the feel of where you were at different time frames in life. So when you were you came into the city from Jersey, so you must have been 30, 31 at the time, and he was the same age as you?
You were born. Yeah.
Okay.
You were just born. Yeah. I think he's a year younger than me.
Where did
whatever.
he go to college, and why did you deem him?
He went to Northwestern.
Oh my God, smarty pants,
he's-
right? Well, but then you went to Wharton, so he probably thought you were
Yes,
smart
I'm
too.
smarter than him. I could beat him up. No, but we spoke when I called this ad just randomly because I was looking for buildings.
What was the building, if you remember?
I don't remember the specific.
Would he remember
was.
it?
Nah, but
might.
we spoke on the phone for like 2 hours.
Car phone or?
No, it was
House
actually
phone.
a house phone. He was in his office phone, and
He had an office. Sorry, he had an office in the city at the time.
He had an office.
Okay.
And I went up to have lunch with him, and he said I should be a broker. So I said, okay. I mean, I ain't doing nothing else. I mean, I wasn't getting paid or anything. So I just started smiling and dialing. So what you do as a real estate broker is, well, I don't know what they do now. But back then, you had these big books called Coles, and they were like this thick. And there were probably 2 or 3 of them for Manhattan. And every single address was listed with the owner
Wow.
and how big it was and the phone number.
That's got to be pretty valuable. And
So you went
people had that
every
today,
single
yeah.
one, and you do like 2 pages a day, calling, and you try to engage the owner, like is he interested in selling, etc. So I was doing that, and then and there were like probably 7 or 8 people in the office, and one of them. Okay, so I want to back up for a second. While I was still living in Princeton, I had found this building in the New York Times ad, and it was, it was a cool building, and it was in Chelsea, and I realized after a little while that it was a flip, meaning that what the people had done was they tied it up in contract for a certain price, and then they shopped it around trying to sell it for more money, so they didn't even have to do anything. They
So
just
that's not illegal
made
to do?
money. No, it's not illegal. Why would it be illegal?
Well, it just seems like if somebody had a contract on
Well, it's
something,
sort of
they should have
somewhat
to-
unethical,
Sure.
but it's not illegal.
Okay.
So I realized that, this is a flip, and I decided I'm not going to do it, because the reason why I knew it was because the guys started getting more and more desperate to sell, meaning that their contract-free period was running out, and they kept on calling me, and then I didn't do it. And then there was a guy in the office, Amit Doshi, another stellar broker, who told everybody talks and says what they found, and he found this building, and I said, I know that building, I want to buy it, so I wound up buying it.
But you wanted to buy it after you had heard from other people.
I already
that,
wanted to buy it back when it was a flip, and then when I realized it was a flip, I said, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, you felt that they were too desperate and there's
it was
something
just
going wrong.
Yeah, I didn't want.
That's crazy that guys who were 30 years old at that time buying buildings in New York. It's just like, if you think about that today in 2024 terms, it would be very difficult for 30-year-olds with no money to buy buildings in Chelsea, right?
It wasn't
Just
easy.
saying.
Believe me, it wasn't
I'm
easy.
saying, okay.
It was a really tough time. Like I bought the first building in 1992, and at that time there was this thing called the RTC, the Resolution Trust Corp, which had been formed by it's not the FDIC. I forgot the name, FSLIC, but F stands for federal.
Okay.
Anyway, Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corp. So there were a few different kinds of banks. And there used to be, I don't think there are any more savings and loans. And the FSLIC would guarantee loans, deposits up to $100,000 or whatever the number was back then. So people would make deposits into the bank, and these people just made loans, and they were just getting fees, and they didn't care about the loans they were making. They just got fees all the time.
This is kind of what happened in 2008, right? With the
Yeah,
housing
yeah,
crisis.
kind of like. Well, I mean, a variation of that for sure.
Yeah, just giving out loans.
But yeah, so then the market went down, and they had given out 90% mortgages.
Oh,
And now the buildings were worth 80% of what they were before. So these 90% mortgages are now worth more than the money, and people were walking away from the properties left and right. There was no personal guarantee. They didn't care. Just walk away from it. And so then, because all these people were walking away from it, these banks started going under.
So
Getting
they were having
foreclosed
fire
on.
sales.
And the FSLIC would take over the banks because they were guaranteeing the mortgage, the deposits. So they said, "You're not here anymore. We're going to guarantee these deposits, and now we own these banks, and they're foreclosing left and right on these buildings, and there were thousands and thousands of buildings across the country that were taken over by the FSLIC. They started this thing called the RTC, Resolution Trust Corp, and they were just fire selling everything, just
all over
getting
the country?
rid of their inventory all over the country. But there was
Right.
tons and tons in New York.
Okay.
So a bunch of the stuff I bought was
And even in Manhattan too, all over the place in Manhattan.
yeah, all over Manhattan.
Okay.
And so there was banks wouldn't lend anymore on real estate at that time, and investors didn't want to invest in real estate because they saw all these other people got burned.
Yeah.
And
You felt like you were the only person at that time that thought it was a good idea to start buying buildings.
that sounds like an
for
Eric
those of
Margulies
you-
quote.
For those of you who don't know, I can't believe we haven't discussed this yet, but for 6 years, I'd say actually 6.5 years, I was working for you.
Yes, you
so
were.
I saw you.
I miss you, Teddy. Come
yeah,
back.
well, I don't know about that. So I would see you at conferences talk about how you got into buying buildings, and that was something that you harped on, that you were one of the only, or you felt like you were one of the only people in New
Absolutely.
York that it was a smart time to buy because the government was like, here, please, just take it. Take the
Everything was
buildings.
depressed pricing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the classic business school model is that you look at the 5-year Treasury note, and at that time it was 8%. And so everything trades off the note. So like that's considered zero risk. So like, the big company at the time, IBM, if that's 8% for the government, IBM would be 8.1%. In other words, that's how much they can borrow. That's the interest rate they would have to pay to borrow. Mortgages, a house mortgage though, was probably more like 9% or 10%. But I was seeing deals in Manhattan where the returns were 12%, 14%. And not only that, but you can raise rents. So if you buy a Treasury note at 8% and you hold it for 5 years, you pay $100 and you get back $100.
At the early part, you want to keep going?
One more line.
Yeah.
So if they had but because you were able to raise rents on these buildings, you're not getting back $100. You're getting back $120. So there were double ways that you were making more money than the Treasury, and the rents were so low because of rent controls that it was basically no brainer. Rents weren't going down. They weren't going down. I bought this building. The average rent was $700, and it should have been $1,400. So I knew that the rents would only go up.
And you saw that it should be $1,400 based on the rents in the area,
Yeah, comparable
right?
rents. Yeah.
Okay. Were there any buildings or particular instances that you, as they say in real estate, lost your shirt? You couldn't pay the mortgage, you lost the building, or were there instances within the first 5 to 10 years where you bought something you thought it was going to be a good deal, or it turned out not to be a good deal? Because now it's a lot easier to know the crux and details of something that has an issue, right? In real estate.
No, it's not.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, now wouldn't it be more easy because you have a lot of people that know the information on the building. You have the DHCR, so you can go back and see what the rent was. You can go and visit the building. Maybe that there are technology things that make it easier. But was there a certain building that you messed up royally on?
Well, you said the first 5 to 10 years. The answer is
Sure.
no, it's fine. First 5 to 10 years. I mean, the worst I did was I bought one building. I know I paid too much for it, and I wound up selling it a few years later.
But
And
did you
that
make
deal was
money on
probably
it?
like a B. No, I still made money.
What building was that?
95th Street. You remember that building? Mike Gordon.
Yeah, Mike Warden. I had, or an instance that I remember vaguely was when you started buying some buildings down here in South Florida, and then you got into something that you weren't as familiar with, and
Yeah.
that was an issue. You want to talk about that for a moment?
Sure.
Sure.
I bought 2 vacant buildings and 2 parking lots
On 12th and Collins.
on
down
12th
here in
and Collins,
Miami.
prime location.
Okay.
And I closed on it right before the market crashed in 2008. So it was really horrible timing. And after a long slog, I wound up giving it back to the bank. Not to the bank. I gave it to the bank, and then they sold it.
In a situation like that, does a lot of money come out of your pocket that goes to the bank, or
I lost a lot of money.
you personally?
Personally.
But then also people who went in on the deal with you
Yes,
lost
they
money
did.
too.
Yeah.
What was that like after being in real estate, buying buildings for around 11, 12 years, where you were like, all right, this is the first one I royally fucked up on?
It sucked.
And that made you not want to develop buildings anymore. What were your plans for the parking lots and the plans for that
I was going to
building?
build a hotel and a parking garage. And actually...
And if you visit 12th and Collins now, they use the same design.
They use the
as you
same
for the
design
hotel.
that I personally designed. I gave it to the architect to draw it up.
Yeah.
But I designed the layout.
But then once you gave it back to the bank, did they say that you needed to give back everything that you have?
That's part of the docs when you sign with the bank.
Right.
That they foreclose
if you
on
have
you.
if you have a good design, we're taking it.
We're taking it. We're
Wow.
taking everything you got.
So you were going to build a hotel. That would have been so cool, man. Sorry
right?
to say. Sorry to say. That would have been
That's
freaking
okay.
cool. What were you going to name it?
Teddy.
The Ted Jones.
Ted Jones.
That would have been cool. What was your relationship like with your siblings growing up? Because they're similar in age to you, right? You have
They're my siblings.
You have an older brother and an older sister. So what
Correct.
was that like growing up with them in Jersey? Because they became lawyers themselves.
But they both became lawyers, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure your grandparents. I'm sure your parents are very happy about that.
Yes. Well, I would like to think my parents were proud.
Talking about
of me too.
Yeah, but at the time when they were going to law school, right? They're probably like, we made it. Our kids are going to law school from Jersey, and then you were working at TGI Fridays. They're like, all right, what's this guy doing?
Well, I had an MBA while I was working at TGI.
Would you say what?
Okay. So I had a friend. So I remember thinking, I said to somebody, I'm the only waiter at Fridays with a Wharton MBA. And so my friend said, well, I'd rather be a waiter at Fridays with a Wharton MBA than without a Wharton MBA.
And I remember I asked you one time, I was like, oh, well, what does that person do now? You're like, I don't know. Are you friends with them on Facebook maybe?
No, not. Oh.
Send them this episode?
Yeah, I think she's on my Facebook.
Send her this clip.
Okay.
Phoebe, you getting this clip. Whatever her name is.
Her name is Speedy.
Stop. Her name's actually Speedy?
Well, that's her nickname.
But I called her Phoebe? That kind of sounds like it.
That's crazy.
That's like sometimes when I talk to somebody in the crowd, I'm like, what's your name? Sanjay? He's like, it's RJ. Something.
Well,
Love,
actually, one time I was
Indian-looking
at the
fella.
Palm in East Hampton, and it was COVID.
What
so
a flex, huh?
There were only like 5 or 6 people at the bar.
Yeah.
And I was sitting at the bar with my buddy Sam, and there was this girl, across the way because, like I said, there weren't many people there, and we were talking to her, and I said, let me think, your name is Maggie, and she got so offended, and then I find out I find out her name is Megan. What?
Well, Megan and Maggie, I think, are different. It's got
I
the
guess
first
they're
two
different, but
letters
they're the
kind of
same thing.
Yeah.
Come on,
Right.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't think people are named Eric that much anymore.
Well, I don't think they never were.
Really?
I had like one kid in my class named Eric when I was growing up.
I don't find so many Teddies. When I do, I'm like, all right.
All right.
But then I'll ask them what their real name is.
Oh, it's
and then
always
they'll say
Theodore.
Yeah. So you had a good relationship with your brother and sister growing up. Was there anything, maybe any advice that they had given you when you felt like you were...
Eric, stop talking so much.
No, but like when you were struggling, maybe financially, career-wise.
No. I didn't go to them. I went to my parents.
And what were some of the things that maybe they said to you that gave you encouragement?
I don't know. You're not dead.
That's what they said to you?
No, I don't know. I mean, like, keep it up. I mean, they were very helpful. They were, they had a little bit more money than none, and I had none, and so they were helpful. My father was very helpful with me when I started, when I got my first building. He helped me raise money.
But he was given the fact that he had just gone through a crisis with one of the buildings that he bought, like one of the first 3. He was more, I don't want to say scared to go into it, but he was definitely hesitant, right?
Yeah, he was hesitant because of his upbringing in the Depression.
Right.
The most important thing to him was security. And
that's why he would press maybe his children to be doctors or lawyers.
Yeah, security for
always
sure.
have doctors
Yeah,
and
for
lawyers.
sure. So let me just say one thing. So we were sitting at the closing table to buy the first building, and I looked over at my phone. We had already
1992. Yeah.
1992. We'd already raised the money, and I was so pumped about it. And I turned on and said, "Dad, if I said to you right now, let's just get up and leave," he said, "Let's go, let's go." And so he's just like, that was his where he came from. But, he was skittish about all those things. I mean, thank God we didn't go.
Yeah,
but it was just
nuts.
really funny, like, and that's the same way it is me versus you. I mean, you take risks that I never would have thought of to doing, and you do things that I never would have considered doing when I was your age. That's what generations mean.
Right. At the same time, you mentioned that you are supportive financially, emotionally. I think having supportive parents and having people around you that are doing the same thing, it obviously boosts your morale. And you're like, oh, well, other people are crazy enough to do what I'm doing right now. And I think that goes back to you talking with guys like Mike Besson and Amit, who had been in the real estate industry, I'm sure for 3 years or something at the time, where they said that it was a good deal for you to buy that building in Chelsea. What was the second deal that you bought, and at what deal in real estate did you buy and you were like, all right, I think I can make some good money?
That's a great question. I remember sitting on the train, probably New Jersey.
Clip this. We'll put this in the beginning. Go ahead. Hopefully
probably
it's good.
New Jersey Transit. And I was going on the train from South Orange to New York. And I was just like writing numbers down. I was by myself and thinking if the rents go up by this and go by that, and I buy another building, and then I have this one, and I can do this and do that, and I can refinance. I said, wow, I can do this and I can do that. And I realizing that, this really could work. It could really work. And it was still years away from it working. This was probably like 1994, 95, something like this. And it really didn't, I wouldn't say worked until like 97. Which was 10 years after I had been originally laid off from that investment bank. So like I said, it took me 10 years to make a living.
What was the best deal you've ever bought and sold?
And sold?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, because there's some great deals that I bought that I still own.
Right, but I'm talking about like where you bought it at a certain price and then you sold it at a certain price. So
probably in South Beach.
Really?
Yeah, in South Beach. Like I started buying in 2003.
Yeah.
And
what was the kind of stuff that you were buying? Like
there were all those Art Deco buildings, 2 and 3 story Art Deco buildings, like by the Flamingo District.
Where's that?
Inland, in South Beach.
So is that considered like 13th, 14th, 15th?
Yeah,
Street?
It's really considered 5th through 15th.
Okay.
Or 5th through Lincoln Road.
That's the Art Deco district?
Yeah, 5th through Lincoln Road. But I was buying, so I bought a bunch of those buildings, and I had it at 20 at one time. But there were like these 2 buildings specific. Basically, all these things trade on what they were at that time trading on a per square foot basis. I was buying it for $150 a foot, and I had the pick of the litter. There were so many buildings for sale, and nobody was buying, and so I was just buying like corners, because otherwise, if you don't buy in a corner, you're like in like that, and you have windows facing the next building over, and so I bought this one building that was in 2003 or 4, had been gut renovated in 1992. So it was still in pretty good condition. And the condo market was exploding. And those buildings all there were fully renovated, selling for $350 a foot. So because this was 1992, I didn't really need to renovate it. All I did was I painted the outside. I think I put in a new roof and new lobby and nothing inside the apartments. And I sold them for $325 a foot. So instead of the $350 that the renovated stuff was selling for. And we would put 5 apartments on the market on Monday, and by Friday they were all sold. It was amazing. It was amazing.
And was this you had the same strategy when you came down here that you were using in New York for the previous 10 years?
Well, no, it was just a different market because, in New York it was all about the rental income. Here it was just per square foot, buying it, didn't care what the rent was,
and then you sell it,
selling it out as condos.
Right.
And then there was another building called the Normal Lee that I bought, and I did nothing to it. I owned it for like 14 months, did nothing, and I sold it for twice as much as I bought it for.
And you think that was just the market?
It was, yeah, it was a market.
So if you had to give advice to somebody who was in an industry, they're doing well, they're making money, what would be something that you'd say to them? Is it stick with what you know? Don't venture off the things that you don't know?
I don't
keep doing what you're doing.
I don't know that I would venture up. I would say find the opportunity.
Yeah, we're back. We're back in it. Sorry, guys. Okay, go ahead.
So
I cut that part
I
out.
should
They
probably
probably
back
didn't know
up.
that
So
happened.
it's saying that when you're putting in your time, it really does make a difference. You get to know people, and more importantly, people get to know you. So it's a famous broker, Bob Knackle, a friend of mine, said it's not who you know, it's who knows you, because they know to call you, they know to give you the opportunities, they know that if you've been. That's another thing is don't cheat, don't scam the system. Just be honest, and it really does pay off. Like when early on, there were 3 people that were big players, big players on a small level, me and 2 other guys. One of the other guys stole money from his partners.
Gosh, I remember this.
He stole money from his partners.
I remember you told me about that guy when I first started working.
In the meantime, the market's going like this. We're all doing really well. And this guy who stole, I don't know how much he stole, $75,000 to $100,000 from his partners, was never able to do anything again.
And that $100,000 would have been
lost
like
millions of he lost out on an opportunity to make millions.
50 million maybe?
That he lost out on?
Maybe.
Probably more.
That's wild.
It's just stupid short-term thinking. So don't do short-term thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you feel about drugs? I'm just kidding. Don't do drugs, right? Nice. Yeah. No, I don't.
I have some. I'm joking. No. So it's really important. It's important to your reputation, your word are really important things.
Yeah, and
people come to you and solicit you because they know about your reputation.
Every time I've met a person who knows you, they have nothing but good things to say about you. To be honest,
nice.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you.
100%. Nobody's ever said, well, maybe somebody's been like, oh, your dad's really tough. If somebody who works for you, maybe something like that. But no one has ever said anything negative about you, at least when talking to me, which is a good thing.
Because they know you'd beat them up.
Yeah, that's true. Is there something that we missed or something that you'd like to discuss, or maybe advice that you'd have for me or people around my age at 30, people who are figuring out their careers? And hopefully we're going to live a little bit longer. So maybe there's some longevity in things that we're doing. Go ahead.
It's not just to work hard, but it's also to work smart. And sometimes working smart is even more important than working hard. I said, like I said, you keep your reputation intact. People always have to know that you're a good guy and you're an honest guy. You're not going to stab them in the back, and you're not going to steal things from them, whether they be ideas or money or what have you, women. It's really important that you're going to be in this for the long haul, and no matter what you do, protect your reputation. If you're working and you're doing an entrepreneurial kind of a thing,
you own a mechanic shop.
Make sure where you're going is the right way. See where you're going to be on this path in 5 years and 10 years. And where do you want to be in 10 or 15 or 20 years? What do you want to have? Is money important to you? Is freedom and time important to you? Are they both important? And make sure that you're on that track. See if there's a mentor available, get a mentor, somebody who can tell you, oh, you should be doing this, or when I was your age, I was doing that. Those kind of things. It's really important to respect and listen to people who've already done this stuff. The world is so much different today than it was 30 years ago when I first started, with the internet and social media and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very different. So you have to adapt.
You brought up an interesting point just then, finding someone, a mentor, somebody who's done it already. But would you suggest taking advice from just anyone? Like, can somebody who you never thought would give good advice give a good gem at a particular time? Or is it only...
Sure.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask if it's only listening to people who have done what you want to do. Because there's a lot of stress on that. People will talk about, well, I'm not going to listen to this guy. He's not in a position that I want to be in. But I think that even just whatever it is, if I'm listening to someone who maybe watches the podcast or who has watched a vlog before, they're like, yeah, that part was really funny. It'd be funny also if you... this little thing in there, like, okay, maybe I don't want to switch lives with this person, but they just consumed content. Maybe they have a little a little suggestion in there that would be beneficial to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the entire world can teach you things.
Yeah.
You know, some parts can teach you a lot more than others.
That's true.
And you got to be able to filter it out yourself. You know, you take it all under advisement.
Do you think AI is going to change the real estate market or change brokers or anything in New York City within the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's because we're able, you know, you can access information so much more quickly. So you have, I mean, you know, if I'm buying a building, I can figure out what comparable rents are all over the place. AI can aggregate that so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stuff you're still going to need to do. I'm still going to need to go and look at the building and feel it, and see, like, is this a great area? Is it going to get better? What's going on with these stores? That kind of thing. Do people want to live here?
Yeah.
But AI can definitely help. I think in my specific corner of real estate, less so, which is good because I don't feel like learning it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny. Like I say to people my age that this is where we're going to leave off. You know, I see where my mother is, and for her it's like the internet. That's where she left off. So she learned the internet, but it's not as easy for her as it is for me.
Right.
You know, it's more seamless for me. You know, I can use my phone. I can do everything on my phone. My mother only uses a few functions on her phone.
Yeah, and I think it's like once you hit a certain time frame in your life, or you hit a certain age, you're like, okay, I know what I know, and I don't really want to learn other stuff, because and it also becomes it starts to become way more difficult. Like when we were at grandma's house, we were teaching her with this remote. Okay, don't use this remote. You can use this TV, but make sure you press this. And it's gotten so much more difficult, even from when I was a kid. I remember the remotes were so easy to use 20 years ago.
Well, there wasn't
or 15 channels, but it was fine back then. And now it's like
much access.
Yeah, you have the Sonos bar attached to the Samsung TV. So if you want to turn up the TV on the surround sound, you use the Sonos up and then use the TV down.
That is annoying. Where you have two different ways to do
I think that things will come together.
I would like that
in a more seamless manner, where we're going to be using AI, and there are going to be so many jobs that are going to be reliant on AI just because it's so much cheaper to use robots. I don't know if you saw, that's the laundry alarm, but I don't know if you saw Jeff Bezos they're going to start using robots in their factories, because it costs $3 an hour compared to $18 an hour to use a robot instead of a human.
For sure.
So we'll see how
people are going to have to get smarter
changes.
also. I guess people will get smarter because you know you can't just get a job where you're putting stuff in boxes and sending it down the conveyor belt. Yeah, you know, that kind of stuff. We don't need you for that. You know, you're a smart human. Let's use you, and you know, and people will be happier possibly also
being happy
to an extent.
Yeah,
doing something more gratifying. I mean, I guess that's a nice way to look at it. But other people are saying that it could be doomsday.
How many years of your life would you say that you struggled to find something that you were good at and that you knew you were going to be successful in?
I'm still struggling. You know, it's a constant thing. You know, I mean, you know, you always. I'm not struggling, but I'm not. You know, I'm always looking for the thing that's going to hit it, do it. You know, it never stops. Jeff Bezos is looking for that too. You know, you don't stop growing. Your mind's still going. There's still opportunity. There's always opportunity.
I think I got a good question to wrap this up here. Does money buy happiness? As people always ask. People always want to know this question.
No, it doesn't buy happiness.
What does it do? It
enhances you. It buys not being miserable. It buys not having to worry about money. That's for sure. You know, money is a major stress point for a lot of people, and if you have more money, in theory, that should alleviate that.
So it makes life easier.
Well, I'm not sure. You know, I had a girlfriend once who would say it doesn't matter how much money you have; it's how much money you spend.
Okay,
and that's true. You know, I mean, if you make $1 million a year, but you're spending $1.2 million, you know, you have a lot of money, but that's an issue.
Super aft because then taxes too, right?
Yeah, I mean, or if you make $30,000, but you're spending $27,000,
it matters what you spend.
Yeah,
which is a good way to think about it.
It is.
All right,
that's great,
Dad. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Love
Eric Margulies, guys. Love you too. You're a great dad, great person, great human.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, if you ever get to know this guy, you see him on the street, say what up.
Wow.
But you're a nice guy, cool, calm, most times, collected, always, most times. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast
It's
for the
my
second
pleasure.
day in a row.
I'm honored.
And until the next time you're on the pod, Dad,
right.
thanks for everything. You're a great guy. All
Thanks,
right,
Eddie.
guys,
You
thanks
too.
so much for tuning in and listening. See you next time.
See you guys. Peace.